any proposed revisions to the agenda? I just want to add after item 3A, we'll have a report on legal ramifications of allowing or making exceptions to the city residency requirement for boards and commissions. That's just an oversight, like part B should be discussion of possible changes to allow people from outside the city, and then public comment. Okay, so we will go on with then the update section. And I don't know who from the clerk's office can give an update about public comment, like electronic signage.
I can do that. So we have created the form, shown it to, I think, most council members. And there was a little concern about using the QR code from ITS. So we've tried to meet with them a couple of times and that has not worked out, but with the recent cybersecurity training that we had, I wonder if a QR code is just not ideal. We should just use a tiny URL. They're just getting hacked more, yeah. And so everything is ready to go in terms of using an iPad. I think that's probably ideal. I'm not quite sure, looking at the calendar, if this Wednesday is ideal to use to test it out, so.
We let on.
Oh, yes. I think my recommendation would be the 22nd. But I guess it's really up to you all. We can discuss it and answer any questions. I could probably pull the form up too if we want.
So you would be ready to move forward on the 22nd.
We're ready now, but I think there still needs to be some discussion on who is gonna be managing calling on the people.
Yes.
It's ideally, we can set it up and the chair or president would be the one kind of queuing up the public commenters. We did that a little bit, you might remember during COVID when we first went hybrid, or actually all virtual. And that tended to work out okay. So basically, someone would just need to be able to filter that spreadsheet. Is the public commenter wanting to speak on something on the agenda? If so, then they would wait until that section. If it's not, then they would have the opportunity to speak at the first public comment period or the second. So we'll just be managing that side of it. And we can have, I think, longer discussions on that too. I also did ask, facilities or public works if they had an iPad stand, which would be kind of nice because then that removes people from lining up at the podium and taking a lot of time to sign in. It's secure, it would be locked, so that's another plus. But before we buy one, we want to make sure that we're going to use this process and not continue with like paper, so. That's kind of where we are. I am okay with not going down the QR code. So if you all are, I think it makes no sense. And then we would populate the tiny URL in the chat. And really anywhere else we want to, but just for those folks who don't want to type it in, they would just come up to the iPad or computer.
Great. Did you say there are 2 iPads
Yes.
available?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And they're the larger ones, so I think that they would be ideal. We also have a computer that could be used.
so as far as placing them in council chambers, do you think at the
I don't know,
Clerk's
those are
desk?
details to be kind of ironed out. I do see, this is why I think the stand would be nice, because you could put it kind of like away, so it wouldn't necessarily be where the people are speaking. It could be over by our desk, by the media desk. There's a lot of options. But until we get some sort of stand or secure way, I'm a little hesitant to just put an iPad, a city iPad logged in. You know, it's tied to the clerk account, so I don't want someone to log off of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to see if we can borrow an iPad stand that locks. Basically, that's kind of where we're at. That would be my preference anyway, but we're welcoming any feedback.
I think it would make sense to wait until the 22nd, once we have everything the way we would like to be.
Especially if it sounds like everyone feeling comfortable too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that. We'll have to, like, between the president, vice president and parliamentarian, we'll have to work out who's going to monitor it
Yeah,
and maybe do a test run.
I was gonna say there might just be a small learning curve of how to access that, how to filter it. I don't think it'll be difficult, but it'd just be a small adjustment.
Yeah.
That, you know, knowing me. I'm sure other people will be the same way. It's like, oh, yeah, right, I forgot, that's my job. You know? All right, I forgot, I have to do that.
I think I'm gonna join, excuse me, and see if I can, share my screen, just to show you briefly here. What it looks like as a reminder, because it's just a sortable spreadsheet, so is it on the agenda? You'd sort it by, the no's first, because they would clearly be wanting to speak during the first, session. Actually, does anyone have an interest in seeing this? Or not?
I'd like to see,
Okay,
if you don't mind.
yeah, I have it ready to go. Maybe. So the form. This is what the form would look like. More or less, it's always changeable. But there's a very brief intro name. We want to track if they're commenting via Zoom. There's other questions, but basically what I'd like to show you is the spreadsheet. Is that we will be able to see a little bit here. So then it'd just be a little prep work ahead of time. But as you can see, this is sorted by no's first, then yeses, and then what's nice is over here, it would tell you what item is on the agenda, and then the president could sort it that way too.
Yeah.
And as we use it, it could be tweaked a little bit more, so.
Well, what's nice about a Google Doc is that even during the meeting, if people are still citing,
Yes.
you can still sort it easily
Yes.
into the
And by,
buckets that you need.
and it's in a queue because it's time spent. And there might be hiccups, there might be, we call the wrong person first, and that can happen. And if the president wants to bounce back and forth between Zoom and in person as well. But what's nice about this from our point of view in the clerk's office is that we have the correct spelling of names. A snapshot, and I think it'll just make things a little bit easier in the long run. There's gonna be a learning curve, I imagine. But I think in the end, it will be quite useful. And I think other second class cities use similar type of public assignment systems. But yeah, I can share this, oops, wrong computer. I can share this if you all want to fill it out. Oops. How do I stop sharing?
So the question of whether or not they're on Zoom is, you have to scroll to see that.
It's still on the same spreadsheet,
Okay, yeah.
yeah.
Scroll.
And the other thing, sorry, the last piece I'll say about the form itself is we don't want to overly complicate it for maybe non-savvy users of technology, which we encounter often. Yeah, but we can have any kind of follow-up conversations about it, or is it useful if I share the link with folks to fill it out to see what the public sees? Council staff included?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, I'll send that out.
It hurt. Does council staff have any concerns?
You know, as always, probably my primary concern is just how the technology functions together in practice. Because already there are 4 different computers that we operate during the council meeting. We have consistently had issues with the podium timer. And at any given night, it could be an issue with another computer as well. So I want to like work out any kinks in advance.
And I mean, the other piece is we don't need to go to a form like this, we can still use paper.
True.
But then it brings the issue of when somebody is trying to make minutes and we're trying to read, even though the paper form says, please print legibly, people, I
They
think
sign
people
it.
get up there and they literally sign it and I think they just go. And so it's really hard for us, to see, and if somebody's trying to do meeting minutes and trying to go back and look at the document, then we try to go and we'll have to like pull up the meeting and try to figure out who, what, when, where.
And on top of that too, there is one member of the public who is quite humorous and misspells their name every time. They've not been around lately, but it's been very funny.
Well, I think it would be good if maybe Courtney, myself and Hopi did like a little practice
Test run.
and yes, Hopi will decide which of us is the primary responsible for this.
I feel comfortable with it. I don't mind
That'd be great.
being in charge of it because I think it's pretty straightforward and I won't. I'm not like, distracted trying to organize the meeting. Right, I've never played.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So that's fine.
Hopi shouldn't do it.
Right.
I mean, that's. But yeah, we can confer with you and
Yeah.
maybe do a test.
Yep.
All right, any other comments, concerns before we move on? Okay, proposal for planning and scheduling deliberation sessions, so that was revised a little bit since last time. Lisa, do you have anything to say? I don't know if we need to,
I think Sasha would know.
Yeah, Christine can present on this. We have some revised.
Yeah, there's,
Documents.
so we included the memo, with red lines from last time, and so basically. It's pretty similar from the last Google form that we had, but we just add some like required fields, including, stage. Of that specific legislation discussion, if there's like any legislation included in that discussion. Which we asked which stage of this legislative process they're in, and then. Also like what type of meeting it envisioned, and also. What type of like public engagement, potentially like the deliberation session we had, last month, I believe, with like the public and like table discussions. So sort of like breakout groups, things like that, so. Also whether we need like facilitators, that's also an optional field, and also, sorry, required fields. And optional fields, there's like, we added, whether or not, other CMs or council members are, actually, sponsoring this deliberation session as well. And helping with, the topic and, maybe gathering potential, information and documents that pack the materials that needed for that session. And I guess, that's it, so. Sam and I worked on this and, I believe checked with, Isabel about this, so. Let us know if there's anything else you'd like to add on that, or.
any comments on the form?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what's the next step? We were just send this to all council members?
Yeah, I believe so. So, if this form is ready to go, we can send that out maybe in an email and then like having the document, like shared with council members.
Well, that sounds great. Thank you very much. Okay, then, third thing under updates is revision of code to clarify that reports are not just from city offices. So that, thank you to the staff who created this legislation so that we can enact that.
Yeah, so for today's meeting, we prepared an ordinance with a red line document that shows the changes, the addition of the city clerk and city boards and commissions.
Anybody have any feedback on that? Does it look good to everybody? On that form? Good. Okay, great. So we can bring that forward. On behalf of the committee. You need to.
That was my question. Would you want to introduce this? Just as we would any other legislation, or at that meeting, would you like to report on that as the chair? Before having a vote on it? Just hand over under first readings like we normally would any type of legislation.
Yeah, let's see why not.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, it'd be quick. Should go through all the steps we need to do. So for any small change after much discussion about possible other changes.
often the law is like that.
All right, so let's move on to the city residency requirement for service on boards and commissions. And there will be a public comment section for this topic. But first, let's hear from council staff, and thank you so much for preparing this compendium of all the boards and commissions and what they do and what residency requirements apply.
I'll speak to this initially, and then Christine can provide some additional detail. We spent a significant amount of time reviewing this and working with the clerk's office as well. As an overview, boards and commissions have been holistically reviewed, I think, in the past with respect to appointments of county residents. Largely when we went through and examined each board and each commission, it either had county representation in some form. Many of the boards and commissions do have appointments, or a county official actually makes the appointment. In other situations, state statute requires city residency on top of any requirement by the Bloomington legislature. And then in other situations, we saw where there was an aspect of city finances involved, such that there could be a compelling argument for restricting appointments to city residents. Christine put a lot of time into this, so I'll let her speak to it in more specific detail.
Well, yeah, and also thank you, Jennifer, for working this out
Yeah.
with us. So we went through basically all the boards and commissions, which is like 40 something that we have in our city. And so I won't go into all these details regarding each board or commission. But there's like some findings after looking into this research. So actually, maybe we can just go directly to the conclusion of this research, which is in page 22 of my research document, but I think it's on page 11 of the packet. No.
I have it as 31.
Yeah, 31, thank you. So, I think the first thing is after looking into this, just like what Lisa said, the question of like whether county resident can be, included or considered as an application or become like a membership of certain boards or commission had already been taken into consideration at some point before. So, like you can see in several different boards and commission, they're already including seats appointed by the county commissioner specifically, or they allow like county resident to apply and then going through like common council, be appointed by the council or appointed, by the mayor's office. And so I think all those other that are not currently allowing like county residents, like potentially are required by state law, specifically limited them to be like city residents or other like focusing specific on city's task or more like responsibility tied in directly to city fundings. So maybe that's why that although some of those boards and commissions restricted to specifically city resident only. So we believe that maybe a more practical consideration is that we can see if each board or commission individually, for example, like our commission that needs like opening to county residents. So that's like just sort of due to some of the nature of those boards and commissions, so that's why it seems not very workable to have a general rule, adding like a county resident to each board and commission. And for arts commission specifically, I talked with Jennifer about this. Maybe a potential option for that commission is to like adding an advisory seat for county resident in that commission specifically, and also another option is to like allow one like county appointment potentially either from mayor or from the council. And that kind of clarified the issue between like who made that appointment and specifically how that appointment being made. And the last thing that we identified is that the general rule, which is the BMC section 2.08.020, that one, the residential requirement, there's like some ambiguity there, which currently the provision only state that the city resident requirements are for only boards, commissions, and councils, but not specifically for advisory committees. So we're thinking that for clarification, maybe like adding advisory committees on that provision will be helpful, since after my talk with Jennifer, that there might be a need like for certain advisory committees are still like restricted for city resident only, since your task and there's specific city funding regarding that boards and commissions. Yeah. I think
Which-
that's everything.
I was gonna say, case in point, CAPS.
Yeah.
CAPS Commission is an advisory committee,
Mhm.
and therefore that is only tied to city residents
Mhm.
being able to be a part of that. And I just wanted to interject and also say, like, obviously, like, this came from the situation where it wasn't ideal. And sometimes when there's heartburn, there's beauty after situations have come about. So this has been a long time coming, honestly. But it was necessary for us to kind of dive in, and I think we, when Christine and I like worked together on this collaboratively, we found that there is some cleanup, so to speak, when it comes to this. The other thing that I wanted to point out too is, initially, like, I'd already created a spreadsheet that showed all of our boards and commissions in the city, and if it had a requirement of. A city resident or can allow Monroe County residents, to be a part of it as well. And if there was Indiana code that also ties all into this. So it was a really fun process and I, appreciated the opportunity to have, to work with Christine on this as well. And I do think I am in agreement of, I think this is definitely a case by case basis. And I think in terms of adding advisory, I would maybe even take it a step further since this is coming through the CCP, that if you're going to do the take of advisory. Then council should be the person to make the advice, like should have the advisory seat. My personal opinion, take it how you want, but I was just thinking about that, and that's not to say that we are adding. To the typical or let me rephrase. We're not adding more bodies to the board of commission. I think that was something else that we had talked about too, is if there is a vacancy, you can change that vacancy into an advisory seat. And obviously we know, and when I send out the appointments to people that are taking advisory roles that are council appointments, we also specify that you do not have a voting privilege and that this is sheer advisory. So we make that explicitly clear to everybody, and also it's updated and on board too. So when we go in, you'll see that it says voting seat, and then some of them say advisory, kind of like how CHLA, the Commission on Hispanic and Latino Affairs, has some council seats that are voting, and then some seats that are advisory seats too. So.
One additional point to add is that, the spreadsheet that we are preparing actually just reflect kind of all of the research that is done here. And I think that spreadsheet helps to kind of identify like certain boards or commission that currently like with non county resident or like non-county commissioner appointments, and also like identify all like boards and commission that are required by the state law. So because we are still currently updating the spreadsheet, so potentially that could be put on our next meeting packet if we're interested in that.
And then I just thought of it, one more thing, sorry, not sorry, so I think I mentioned this before to Councilmember Piedmont Smith when we discussed it. And I know that Christina and I had a conversation about this last week. The residential requirement is in a very odd spot in the BMC. So when I'm regular G.I. Jane and I wanna go in and I wanna take a look at, you know, what's happening and in terms of what qualifies me as a resident and a community member here in Bloomington, I would assume that I would go to the code and go click on boards, commissions, and councils. However, when you go and do that, it does not specify residency requirements. It's in a very weird spot. And it is in the executive branch area under general provisions. And that's where somebody can see where your residency requirements go. So when we had a lot of input rather on what happened with the appointment to the Arts Commission. People did not know where to find this, and so it basically left people to the imagination of, well, I don't see where this requirement is because it's not here. And only, you know, us nerds that look in code a lot every single day and know about heart, know exactly where to find it. So I would also, you know, recommend to, I know Title II is still in a work in progress, but this is definitely a blaring thing that should be looked at as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes.
If you were to revise that section, where the residency requirement currently appears, would you also amend that portion of the BMC that includes the removal process? Would you put all of that under boards and commissions in your?
Yes, I would agree. And I think we talked about this earlier this year when it came to some other council appointments, because it's not made clear under that particular part, it talks about how, you know, the person that is an office of the mayor appointment can be removed for just cause. However, there is no really rhyme or reason when it comes to council appointment. And there's really it's not clearly defined in code like the process for that type of thing. And I think that's definitely something that could be put in code for everybody as well.
I think the language, even though it's embedded in the executive branch. Applies also to council appointments, all appointments, the language refers to all appointments. I can only speculate that maybe. The city appointments are housed under the executive branch because. Often, boards and commissions are associated with the executive branch.
Yeah.
But I agree that putting all of those requirements and all of that language under boards and commissions makes sense. I've not talked about that with the legal department, however. I don't know if they have a different opinion.
The problem with that is that not all boards and commissions are in the same part code as far as I recall. Are some of them under CFRD,
Yes.
some of them are. Under 212, which says boards and commissions and councils, and those should all be there. Anyway, so I'm not sure. See, once you clean up one thing, you just know, another thing.
Yeah.
So true. So, but focusing on the residency thing, what are some reactions?
I think the way that Christine laid it out made a lot of sense, especially regarding, you know, we don't have county seats on boards that are distributing city funds. So I do understand why that would be the case. I'm not completely sold that county residents would not also benefit from having a seat on that, specifically on the Arts Commission and any other commissions that might distribute money that would support, you know, local, I don't wanna just say artists, but, you know, individuals who may have a hard time being supported by other funds, especially given the federal and state, yes, circumstances.
I agree, yeah. I think it makes sense for some representation, obviously in certain areas. Not.
I think honestly, the affordability issue of the fact that there are a significant number of residents in Monroe County that would live in Bloomington if they could afford to. For me, like, that is a little bit of a policy failure that doesn't necessarily like rest on anyone's shoulders, but it is a direct result of Bloomington is an expensive place to live. There are quite a few people in the county who would love the opportunity to be able to contribute in a positive way to the city.
I think my initial, I appreciate all the research and information, help us think about this. My prior input on it had been that my gut was to prefer a uniform approach. It seems like that's really not feasible for a variety of reasons. So even if it is like a uniform approach, that would be to like a subset of commissions for which we ultimately decide like this is a good idea, maybe just like 5 or 6, but like still taking maybe the same approach with those 5 or 6, whatever it is. So that's one takeaway. I think y'all present a compelling case for why Canberra should apply a blanket rule. Second, I share some of the thoughts just shared by public committee members, and I'm sort of mixed mind on this, and I think maybe another reason why some case by case consideration is needed, because I do have some hesitancy at times with when we have political units for a reason, the same way we don't let an Indiana resident serve on an Illinois redistricting commission or something, right? Like, it's just like, that's a different context, it's state, much more stark, but like, you know, there's always a case to be made for neighbors having input, and so I guess I do get a little wrapped up in that sometimes, like, you know, it depends a little bit on the subject matter, it depends, and I think ours is kind of innocuous, and like, the most, I don't, like, not to say insignificant, but just like, that's not an area where I have a lot of concern about Kent County, resident participation, also like. Some of those concerns are probably mostly in the realm of the theoretical and not the practical, so I'm mindful of that too. Which, all of which to say, those are kind of my thoughts on it, I'm curious, yeah, to think through with the committee, like what a good next step would be, to keep advancing this conversation. Also curious if the decision from the mayor's office is still, what I understood last, meeting to be sort of a uniform opposition to this. But interested to hear more, so.
As a legal matter, we didn't see a reason why a county appointment couldn't be added for the Bloomington Arts Commission. I mean, that's kind of where this started. And you have the commission telling you, it seems that like their pool within the city isn't big enough to potentially come up with appropriate candidates.
Did they say that?
No, I would say our experience, and I'm on the committee that agrees with Arts Commission, has been quite the opposite, actually. Like Arts Commission is consistently a commission with a lot of high quality applicants and a lot of interest. That's true maybe of some other commissions. But I think it's about the perspectives was my understanding.
Okay, but I thought there was a reason why they were supporting including a county.
Yeah. I think some of the, well, they expressly named affordability as a barrier to access for some
Yeah.
folks living in the city, so like, I think it was about diversifying the pool of potential applicants in the interest of getting more perspectives. But I just wanted to note that as distinct from whether or not we have an adequate number of qualified and interested applicants.
Yeah, no, I think, but if you want to add a county appointment to the commission. I didn't see anything in the code that through that.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like they're handling city funds, for example, large amounts.
I mean, are they the deciding entity or a recommending entity on grants?
I thought they did
They
decide.
decide.
They're deciding.
They
I
decide.
mean, yeah, they're our thing, but. Again,
And it's not like public works,
yes,
this
this is true.
I was gonna add to, I think, one of the things that I remember hearing from watching the discussions kind of going back and forth with them is that they're very particular, in the voices that are coming in, and so they have a niche for somebody who is very good in music. They are trying to look for another person who is good in, a different types of arts, so to speak. So they're trying to get like a wide, diverse background of all types of affiliates with the arts community. And in particular, again, their conversation is that because they are doing the arts project with the upcoming Bloomington/Monroe County Convention Center expansion, they thought that having that county input could be a best practice, so to speak, for a person from the county to give input. And so instead of giving, that particular individual voting privilege, it was thought of as maybe you can add an advisory seat.
Julius, do you have anything to add from the mayor's office?
Sure, should I come up with a
Yeah.
summary?
Say your name for the rest.
Sure. Hi, everyone, I'm Julius Mitchell, from the Office of the Mayor, the Legislative Affairs Specialist is my title, it's kind of a mouthful. So, yeah, I actually didn't know that Christy and Jennifer were working on this document, and it's great, I've just been perusing it a little bit. But, yeah, as far as the mayor's opinion, I wouldn't say it's a blanket no on any county, it was just, I think the idea was. Adding a county resident to every single board of commission seemed a little much, but if the council were to take a. Looking at each one individually, I don't think there's a blanket no in place as far as something like that. I can also speak to the Bloomington Arts Commission a little bit, because I kind of interviewed for that vacancy. And I can say that there was an abundance actually of really qualified candidates, which is a great problem to have. But so it's sort of a shame how many no's we had to say, because of how many good applicants we got. So that, if that's the concern as far as filling vacancies, I think the Bloomington Arts Commission is kind of unique in that they. A lot of really qualified people, driven people, so that's my take on that, given that I interviewed for this spots, so I'm familiar with that.
Tell them to apply to council.
So that's, I guess, the extent of it would be like, if we were to look at these from an individual perspective, I don't know if the mayor has a. I don't know, one to take on that. But, yeah.
You're welcome to stay there.
And if you have any other questions that I just forgot to touch on. So,
Do you have any I guess I'm gonna ask everybody, what about this idea of advisory members? So they're not voting, but they get to be part of the conversation. That may be a way to approach these bodies like the Arts Commission that do handle city funds. Which is the point of contention with the mayor and maybe some of us, I don't know. But they can still have input from people who don't live in city limits. Thoughts?
Does anyone ever turn down an advisory position? I know when I managed them, they have. So the Commission on Hispanic and Latino Affairs. Someone did not want to be an advisor in an advisory seat. It was a council appointment. This was years ago, but didn't recently, no.
Usually I see the opposite. We always see an HPC and CHLA are two prime examples, because those are the ones that have advisory seats. If a council appointment is starting off at advisory, if there is a voting seat, they immediately will try to switch to
They see
it.
it as like a foot in the door.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that because I wrote down, are there two tiers of service then? Like somebody's doing the work, going to meetings, reading packets and everything, but they don't. So,
Yeah, that would be my one concern. I just was putting myself in those shoes and thinking. I might feel not so good about that.
Yeah, I don't know, it'd be interesting to talk to folks who served in advisory capacities. We have a few examples of this, including the Historic Preservation Commission as well. And just getting their opinions about it. My gut is that in practice. Including experience serving on commissions, like things operate. It's rare that like you're having a vote where it's gonna be like a 6-5 vote and like somebody not having the vote, like. Change the outcome, like it's much more input, discussion, consensus based. The practical aspect of an advisory seat in most cases, or in many cases, will be almost indistinguishable. And I do like that it, maybe has, it safeguards against some of the concerns, particularly around finances or things like that. And it's not, we do have other examples, that's not just on boards and commissions, but that conceptually, we have the county surveyor sits on the planning commission as an advisory post, right? It's not just a CO role. I serve on the utility service board, but it's a non-voting advisory role in order to have council, liaison essentially and input at times and that kind of thing. So it's not novel, or unique in the realm of government, I guess, to take this type of approach where there are reasons why particular, member of a political constituency, government being political unit, that, we might take that approach. So my only concern with it is that it's a committee a little, I don't know if it's unwieldy. It sounds like, Jennifer, you were saying that it's actually pretty manageable, and like clearly communicated, so I could see potential for challenges there, but people not knowing it, or, as long as it's all clearly communicated and administered, well, I think that's probably
Yeah,
fine.
I think you're absolutely right. Usually when we're reaching out to people, and I'm scheduling interviews with people, hey, there's a seat. And it is this type of seat. And so I think that is also gone over again when the committee is interviewing the person. And then once again, when the person is actually appointed, all of my letters that I send out to everybody specifies, is this a voting seat or is this an advisory seat? And if it's a voting seat, you have voting privileges. If it's an advisory seat, you have non-voting privilege, so we're pretty clear. I would be shocked if anybody was like, I didn't know, maybe you weren't listening. But at least about 2 to 3 different times before we get to that final stage. And they're very clear to an individual that this is the seat that you're going for.
And on that note, you've done a lot of work too with onboard, so someone applying would see that the vacancy is a
Mhm.
voting or non-voting advisory.
Correct.
Yeah, the one thing that, and this isn't the mayor's opinion, this is mine, just because I work with these boards and commissions a lot, is, sometimes that I would assume as if I were to serve on one of these boards and commissions, an advisory rule, and I were to see a voting seat open up, you would think this is sort of like a pathway to that voting seat. And this might just be my brain thinking like, what could go wrong? But the idea that you might see that pathway, like not explicitly, but like sort of. It's sort of implied, and then if, say, this advisory seat is appointed by council, and then maybe the mayor does not want to appoint them to a voting seat. I could see like some potential like sort of discontentment there, where you would assume it's like clear movement from advisory to voting. But it might not always be the case, and so I just. But the more advisory seats, the more potential that this might happen. I would say that it should probably serve a purpose, if it were to, that have risk. More conclusion like that.
We are pretty explicit in our interview committees about like what it means to have an advisory seat and how like there's a possibility that they would be bumped up into a voting seat, but that like
No, yeah.
and especially because like there are 2 different branches that are making appointments, like we're very explicit, like this is the seat that we're appointing, like this is the seat that you're interviewing for. The other seat has a completely different process and it doesn't give you a leg up, but having the experience might help, but it's not a confirmation. I think we just did that with Drew Herring for the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yes, really.
Yeah.
Which bodies currently have advisory seats, the HPC and what else?
The Commission on Hispanic and Latino Affairs.
Just those 2?
Is there a section of the code that describes what an advisory seat is?
It's,
And Jennifer, does it make sense?
No. Because I think I looked at this when I was trying to figure out how all of this council appointment seats for the HPC were advisory seats. So, and it talks about how you can have, like, council can have no more than 4 advisory seats, but it doesn't really go. I think it definitely should explain that, which is another to update.
Well, for the HPC, I think it's that way because for state code, the mayor appoints them all.
Correct.
Voting.
Correct.
So the only way to get also input indirectly. And then for the CHLA, how many seats are there?
Ooh, I think about 3. Let me go back.
There are multiple.
Yeah, there's multiple seats, however, not all of the council seats. And going here, we got 1, 2, 3, 5. 5 council seats, 2 advisory seats,
So 5 voting council,
or 5 total
oh,
seats.
5 total.
That are appointed by the council, 3 that are voting and 2 that are advisory.
Does anybody know the history of the advisory seats on the Hispanic and Latino affairs? Did you say 2 voting and 3 advising? I know.
the other way around, so 3 voting and 2 advisory. And I tried to do research on this by looking at ordinances from years past, and I couldn't find anything. Like. I'm sure, obviously, there's a rhyme or reason for somebody doing something, but I couldn't tap into the reason. Hmm.
So how would you all like to proceed with this? We could have 2 people work on it and bring a proposal next time as far as, you know, which commissions might have advisory seats, or we can just put it, we can just further discuss it. I don't know how you all want to proceed.
Christine, do we already essentially through your research have a subset of the boards and commissions for which this might be a good question? That we could kind of,
Yeah, actually, we do.
Yeah.
Discussed about this, maybe something like putting it into a spreadsheet or just like an overview of all boards and commission and what we identified, like.
Yeah, like, it seems like we need to have a handle on, like, is it 8 commissions, 11, like, what is it? And once we kind of narrow the set, then we can at least figure out, probably like a uniform approach to engaging them all to ask whether, like, to inform them on what we've been thinking and ask them whether their thoughts are about it. Does it need to be dispositive? Obviously, commissions change over time with their makeup. Ultimately, it's, our responsibility to decide what should go in code, but I think that could help inform. Because there might be unique advantages that those commissions have, just like the Arts Commission, for why it's so good idea or bad idea.
Yeah, there's around 3 or 4 boards and commissions that we identified, which potentially like, without county resident appointment currently. And maybe like not that city specific or regarding city fundings.
Just 3 or 4.
Yeah, around, so not much.
That's manageable.
More
manageable than 11.
Review the list
Yeah.
from agreement,
I do like the idea of reaching out to those specific boards and commissions to get their feedback on what's your unique perspective.
So what happens when someone lives in the city and then moves to the county? Or vice versa? I guess vice versa wouldn't matter as much.
No,
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I think we should let them
Sort out the term, yeah.
Terms of 2 years, I mean, that is.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
riskful in some cases.
No, I mean, yeah. And the Bloomington Municipal Code states.
Mhm.
That you have to be a city resident.
And what does it say? Does it address the question of if you?
No,
No.
No.
But
there's
the
no way to
information
stop.
has to be immediate.
Right. And
Yeah, that was what I was
there's
thinking,
something
yeah, to be
to
honest.
the effect
and that's
that
right, you're
if
testing
you
to that.
leave, then
PO
And
box,
then when you tested, it was accurate.
right, but what about a PO box?
Actually, code does specify what needs to happen. Again, nerd on here. I have it already pulled up, so in that weird wonky spot under executive branch general provisions. It does say, in the event of a member of a board, commission, or council no longer resides in the city, the member shall resign immediately and notify the appropriate appointing official or body. So it is specified, it's just in that weird spot that we discussed earlier.
What number is it in here?
It's after residential requirement number 3.
Oh, I see it.
And this comes up periodically, even in the year that I've been council attorney and just this year. I've communicated with different board or commission members on this very topic.
So for next time, we could just have a list of the 3 or 4. Where a county may be appropriate voting or not. And then maybe we could have a proposal to move this these general provisions about board and commission members into, chapter 2, or 12. Math, work on that. A lot of them.
Yeah. We can talk about it after the meeting, sure.
Does that sound like a good plan? Next time, then we can talk about those for next time.
And then you want to be included.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say, like,
Yeah.
as my role, with communication and outreach, I typically try to reach out. Well, I don't typically, I do, reach out to, staff liaisons and whatnot. I can take that if there's only 3 or 4. And can work with Christine, and anybody rather for, like, to let people know what thoughts are in terms of opening, a particular seat up to a county advisor.
You could invite them to our next meeting. Okay, so let's move on to public comment on this item. That's the next thing. Is there any public comment on the topic of city residency requirements for service on boards and commissions? Nobody else in the room? Any hands online? No. Okay. All right, well, let's move on to city council staff processes, and I think there was some information in the packet. I think the goal is just to have us better understand all the work that goes into preparing for meetings and such. So who wants to? Lisa, do you want to take it?
I referred to this topic when I gave the department's budget presentation to council. And I referred to it as the increased requirements for meeting support and meeting preparation. So we've prepared this 3-page list of the different steps needed to organize a meeting. And those steps occur before, during, and after the meeting. Within the last year, these have increased due to changes in the laws. And also, we've added steps to be more transparent in terms of putting presentation materials online before meeting. Or if somebody hands them to us during the meeting, then after the meeting, we make those available online. So I think these are steps that happen behind the scenes, so you know, unless you work in the office or in the clerk's office, you're not aware of them. But I provide those, we provide those in this meeting to raise awareness about them. As I mentioned during my presentation, we're starting to identify possible ways that we can make this more efficient. The steps are required whether the meeting lasts 20 minutes or 2 hours. And so it will probably be speaking in future meetings potentially about ideas to perhaps make this work more efficient and effective in an effort to reduce staff time so that we can work in other areas. In some respects, we've become a victim of our own success in terms of transparency because we do spend a lot of time making materials transparent, which benefits the public. Hopefully we can find a way that makes that more efficient than what we're currently doing. This list does not include accessibility, different tasks that we need to perform to make documents accessible And we've started really to work on that in earnest, within the last month to 5 weeks. And that's something, the accessibility component is something, we'll explain more about in the future, because, that will affect council in terms of policies potentially that council might need to adopt regarding, what form of documents we receive before meeting, whether they're accessible when we receive them. I think we'll have to set certain requirements on that, because the law will hold council responsible, for it. And this list doesn't include also the various steps that we go through, for the packet preparation. Colleen started a really helpful and informative list of instructions, that we use internally, and how to make documents, how to prepare a packet. And, it's what Christine maybe
26 or
Yeah.
around 30 pages.
pages long. So, you know, it's quite a process. And we do it, it's certainly doable. But it does add, to our workload. Is there anything you'd like to
Yeah,
add on, Christine?
I think we probably covered everything, just one thing additionally we're thinking like is to create templates, what the accessibility requirements that we're currently working on, so. Evan, our second folio fellow is currently preparing like potential, just templates for like agenda or like meeting notice or, legislations, ordinances or resolutions, so. Hopefully those for like make our office more efficient on preparing these meetings. And also, we are trying to identify some of the deadlines internally for like maybe submitting. Different kind of materials, like for example, presentation slides and legislation materials and maybe other reports or additional meeting documents from different entities. And so these are some possibilities that we've been discussing and potentially will have some.
When Christine talks about templates, she's speaking about, a particular type of template that in and of itself is accessible. And in fact, I met with Corporation Counsel last week, suggesting that our office make those available to the legal department to use when they prepare an ordinance or a resolution. You can also share those with other departments too. Like the planning staff, for example. So, we're happy to have other departments benefit from these templates that we're preparing as well. It may save them time. There are different layers to the accessibility. You start out with a template. And then, you apply different applications, when you're actually preparing the specific document.
Okay,
So we don't need any action from the committee at this point. Simply wanted to start the conversation about this. I think, we'll put accessibility on the next meeting agenda, just to describe what this new law entails. It goes into effect in April in 2026. As a result of that, like I said, I think we'll need to prepare, some policy proposals for council ultimately to review. And, maybe adopt, we'll have to think through that.
okay. That would then become part of the administrative manual we're envisioning as we move through Title II.
Yes, but for example, I think council should have a policy in place that would apply to third parties. who want to present materials. In fairness to council and to the public, those should be presented to us in a format that is already accessible. So that we are not burdened with doing a remediation for each of those documents. And then ultimately, I would foresee, and we've already started this, a section on one of council's, web pages that identifies various policies, including the accessibility policies. And we've been speaking, with the office of the mayor with respect to the website. But what are you calling that now, Julie? Is the website overhaul? What?
Are you talking about this, like the whole city website?
Yes.
Uh,
the whole city.
I'm not familiar, that's the call.
So we're working with the office of the mayor to improve council's website, but I think it's a citywide project, not just with council's office.
It's a rebate.
Revamp.
Yes.
Okay.
Jennifer, did you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in looking at this too, the only thing that I would add, I would be remiss if I wouldn't say that, like, the first part of this document here definitely has, like, clerk's office also does a lot of this stuff too, so like, case in point, today's meeting. The CCP, and then when it comes to the interview committees, that's definitely something to consider because I've been trying to brainstorm and thinking, I think Christine and I talked about this briefly, but we said that's another hurdle for another day, to think about this when it comes down, comes to, the interviewing process for boards and commissions. 'Cause I'll be honest, that has been the most, in the 4 years that I've been doing this year has been the most challenging year with respect to doing a lot of the interviewing process and scheduling all of that. It's been time consuming because we've been trying to figure out schedules for every single person. Trying to make sure that two people, respond back to you, and they actually show up in person. But also when we are doing interviews, we have to schedule everybody's schedule. So that is a daunting task, but I think that also could be healthily revised as well.
Yeah, I thought of that too when I was looking at, after council meetings, because the clerk's office definitely plays a role then too. But we don't,
Yeah.
I usually don't think about, oh, we got to put that down.
Yeah.
Making sure it's all goes correctly into the record and amendments.
And I will say, I do appreciate council staff getting that stuff to us perfectly, because it's not necessarily always been the case, but it's worked well with the Word and the PDF versions, so thank you.
You're welcome. No, Jennifer's right. There are steps at the beginning of this list for some council committees where the clerk's office reserves the room, gets the Zoom link, etc. It's a work in progress.
Any questions or comments from committee members? All right, thank you, Sharon, for all your work.
You're welcome.
All right, next item is order of business at regular sessions of council, allowing discussion of legislation at first reading. So in the packet, last document, it's a proposed revision of 2.04.300 to allow discussion at first reading. I also, excuse me, I took a crack at it myself and just formatted it a little bit differently. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share that. It includes all the same language, I think. See if I can share. Okay. So, sorry. Move this over. Okay. So I was looking at this like, A is for ordinances and B is for resolutions. And I think staff was kind of looking at that way too, because you combined the old item B in with A. Because that was all having to do with ordinances.
True.
So instead of, starting with a dependent clause, I thought we could start with every ordinance. Shall be given 2 readings before a vote may be taken on this passage unless there's unanimous consent of the members present to proceed to, I don't know about such a vote, to proceed to a vote after the first reading. In that case, a 2/3 vote of all elected members is required to pass the ordinance. So that's, I believe that's the same language as in the staff version.
Can we zoom in a little bit?
Yeah,
Oh, sure, I'm
I'm
sorry.
gonna take a moment and see if I can make it. Does anyone know which is a full screen?
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's better.
But the sentence starting with a 2/3 vote, that is lifted from the Indiana code. I don't think there's an issue in changing the sequence of, and the phrasing. The Indiana code doesn't refer to first readings or second readings. That's something, I mean, the intent is the same, but in the Indiana code, there are references to the date when legislation is introduced, which is kind of what Bloomington refers to as first readings, and that's not uncommon. There are other second-class cities in particular who use the term first readings.
Yeah. So then, the next, text in black font, an ordinance may be debated and amended at its first reading. And then I added and at future readings, just to be clear. And subsequent maybe is better. Yeah. And then that last sentence was just the old item B moved to A.
I always took, I'm sorry, like,
Please jump in.
I always took, the unanimous consent for title and synopsis only to be as opposed to reading the ordinance in full, which would be the default. Is that was my, like, that's just what I was assumed that section of code meant, that like we would actually read the whole ordinance unless all members said we're gonna do title and synopsis only. I don't know if that has an implication here, but some of the edits made me think that wasn't a common understanding. Oh my god, so I was curious.
Yeah, in fact, we asked a similar question when we were reading this. Like, what is the purpose of unanimous consent? The thing that concerned me was if it has to be, it makes it sound like there must be unanimous consent for anything to be introduced. Like any one council member potentially could block the introduction of legislation by just voting no.
Yeah, it's not, definitely not that, and never has been that, and it is. It's just that it doesn't actually specify what the alternative is if you don't have unanimous consent for title and synopsis only. And my assumption is that it's actually a full reading of the ordinance, that's. And if somebody really wants it to be read into the record, you know, and for people to hear what's in this thing, you know. That like there was always this safeguard any one member could essentially demand that the ordinance be read in full. I consider exercising that right a few times. I haven't. Reasonably and reasonably, obviously, but you know,
It's not in the Indiana code.
yeah.
We talked about that internally. As staff, so, and I wanted to make sure today to point out. This concept of unanimous consent and what it means to you as council members.
Yeah, I've always seen it where we use it. I mean, in the same way the chair might, you know, simply, announce something that would normally be a vote for efficiency's sake. Saying, you know, provided there's unanimous consent, I propose we limit debate this way, something like that. It's just like, you know, it facilitates moving process along while protecting the rights of the minority viewpoint, essentially. And that's, I feel like how it's always been used here as well, and we do. I mean, both Roberts has, you know, unanimous consent for that purpose, and we've used it in other contexts for that reason. So I don't know if it's necessary strictly, we could just specify that, ordinances, you know, should be read by title and synopsis only, and that's just how we do it. Kind of thing,
That's.
And
that's
that's
language too.
right?
Yes.
I guess the key word is in the old language is only. Read the ordinance by title only, provided there's unanimous consent. Which then leads to your interpretation that the alternative is to read all of it.
Mhm.
But I never thought of it that way.
Curious if Clerk Bolton has a perspective on this.
That was how I was trained.
Yeah, same
That-
structure that
Yes,
I
that if it was not specified title and synopsis, it was the entire legislation.
And you know, and this discussion kind of leads into the consent agenda also, because some municipalities. Will use consent agenda for first readings. So, I mean, there are many different options.
I assume they're not having any discussion of those items at first reading, if it's just, if the consent agenda is just being used for introduction.
I would need to go back and look at their procedures. But yes, I would assume there would be no discussion, and of course, I think generally. One or more council members can take that legislation off of the consent agenda during the meeting. If there needs to be discussion.
Right.
So then I add something here under the next section. I don't know if it's necessary to add this, but. The next section said that a majority vote of members shall be necessary to adopt any resolution, order, or ordinance. But we just said that you need 2/3 if it's introduced. And voted on the same night, so,
Only for ordinances though, so that's a state code requirement.
Yes,
right, so I said that here, if there's a vote on ordinance on the same day or at the same meeting, I just repeated the language that we had in the.
Oh, okay,
Earlier
yeah,
paragraph.
but sorry, I'm still looking here.
I did that like 2 hours ago, so I haven't talked this down. Sorry about that, so. I don't know if there's, if we should have staff review my version, if you just wanna go with the version that was submitted, or if we should just put this off.
I-
I'd like an opportunity to review.
Yeah, I think that's good, yeah. Do other committee members think it's worthwhile for us to consider the new version? Just as long as staff reviews it first, we'll consider it next time.
Yes.
I guess this is just got reaction to the two, I kind of favor staff's approach of leading with what the state code requirement is. Rather than like leading with this idea that we're gonna have 2 readings unless. You know. I don't know, like I feel like the governing thing here is kind of state code and then. The change in practice is really about whether or not we're gonna allow ourselves. And under what conditions we're gonna allow ourselves to debate and amend things at first reading.
There may be a situation where council really wants to adopt something on
Right.
first reading. And you may feel like you have no choice.
We've done it, yeah. Sometimes things are really time sensitive, it's not controversial, like it just had to happen this way for a certain reason,
Just the. Looking at it from a layperson's and not a legal perspective, just reading this. It's like, okay, this is where I'm looking in code to see how ordinances and resolutions are read and. And starting out about this exception of 2/3, yada, 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 it's like, you know. It's already making my head spin before I even get to the main thing, which is that an ordinance.
maybe,
You know,
what if we led with
I don't
the,
even remember what the main thing is now.
what if we led with, that under, like,
Given two readings.
normally that, simple majority is required to like pass.
Well, that's in this 204,
Okay.
the
Yeah.
separate section on votes.
Maybe flipping the order actually then helps too, to be like, this is kind of the normal way things are done, and here's the special exception. I don't know, that was just my variation, I need to spend more time with it too, if you could also send it around.
Yeah, I'll send everybody my version and we can have. Both versions vetted by our legal and then we can talk about it again, yes.
Is there a part of Indiana code that combines those two? Like, why is it separated out? In our local code? Or is it separated out in Indiana code as well?
Which part's
So
separated out?
reading versus vote required? Like, does IC 36-7 also?
There is no mention of readings in the Indiana code, so that is unique to Bloomington.
So then could these two sections be combined?
Potentially, you know,
To make it simple?
the resolutions are separated out. And I think it's important to like draw attention to each of those separately. I mean, the vote could be combined with the readings also. I think we were trying, since we're hopefully going to amend all of Title II, we were trying to minimize
I
the
see.
amount of
Okay.
changes now, but maybe that's not possible. Maybe we need
Well,
to
that helps me
expand
understand, yeah.
what's being amended.
And, yeah, I do have to ask for permission.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and part of the intention of this was to cut down on some of the like lengthier discussions, right? It was to like streamline this approach a little bit. Upon reading this, it seems like it's just opens the door for like two discussions of the same item. It seems like this would make a lot of sense to like go in tandem with the consent agenda, like you discuss it on the first reading, if everyone's in favor. Consent agenda for the next meeting, based on such, like to cut that off, this like, literally the same points. I know that that's something that's been considered before, but. And I know that one of the like initial in council with Florida National's last meeting was that. Part of the like second, the double reading was that some members of the public would know that something's being heard, discussed, and then voted on, and so if we put on a consent agenda for next meeting, it's like something between, we would know, does that make sense?
There is interplay between the consent agenda and the number of meetings. You still though could end up with discussion and debate two times.
Yeah, if it's not unanimous.
Can we postpone the rest of these topics for our next meeting? Courtney and I both have hard stops at 1:45.
Yeah, we need to go to public comment and then adjourn. So yes, we will take these up again at our next meeting. Is there any member of the public who would like to comment? Either on discussion of legislation first reading or any other items? Seeing none. Yeah, I think, is there some, have you had a chance to do research on consent agendas?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we'll hear that next time. And then consider these two issues in conjunction with each other. another thing while Julius was speaking, I remember we had talked about limiting the time for the first discussion. So that we don't have like, 3 hours on 2 different dates. Contentious issues, because the point was to get to our questions and possible amendments earlier. So we can talk about that further next time too, whether that's a code issue or just a practice issue or what. Any final thoughts? I think we already have our next meeting on schedule, is that right?
I think it's the 10th.
Second Monday.
William. November 10th.
That's right, this one was a week early.
Right.
Yeah. So, does somebody have that date?
November 10th.
Yes.
November 10th, 12:15 in this room? Okay,
Great.
well, thank you all. We are adjourned. Thanks very much, everyone.